something appears just beyond the glass. The craft is hovering extremely close to the car. It's orange and slightly wobbly or undulating in place as if it's on a wave. You can hear the two guys whispering.
It's exact like your hand is yeah, it's moving the right way, it's the right color, and it's the right shape. So it makes it very the intensity of the light, there's something very, very bright that is affecting that. The dash is being lit. It's the dash of the vehicle and the traffic is above it. Right. And look at the here's the dash, and look at the intensity of the light that's gonna happen here. Right there. Those are really you can and it's fading. You can't fake it. You can see that it wobbles.
But it wobbles. It wobbles. That's the important thing. Yeah. So it does support what you're doing.
It wobbles, it flows like that, in that color, in that shape. That's wild, dude. Yeah, I mean, it's wild. It's impressive. It is.
The craft emits an orange-reddish color, which is not a coincidence. A craft with strong field interactions, like the ones that Bob alludes to, creates an ionized plasma sheet around itself. The dominant atmospheric gas on Earth is nitrogen. Ionized nitrogen that interacts with plasma glows red-orange. This classic observation of a glowing reddish or orange ball of light, moving silently and erratically, is one of the most commonly reported UFO descriptions across decades of sightings worldwide.
No, what? Did you see that movie? No, I didn't.
I know this footage is grainy, and while certainly fascinating, it's far from conclusive, but it is another fascinating data point. What Luigi's movie almost definitively vindicates is the existence of S4. Remember, when Bob went public in 1989, Area 51 itself hadn't even been officially acknowledged by the government. And to this day, S4's existence is still denied. It's not supposed to exist. But Luigi used Google Earth's historical imagery to go back in time and found a 2022 version of the area surrounding S4 that was not yet blurred to obscure the site. And yet, vehicle tracks are visible in these older satellite images.
You can clearly see the tracks. Look at them going in every direction, and you can look at all the traffic. Yeah. Right? Yeah, that's not one guy driving around. No, that's not one guy driving. Exactly. So, again, there's no public out there. So, what are you doing?
Luigi also shows Bob a high-quality aerial photograph taken by a pilot roughly 17 miles from Papoose Lake. The image had previously circulated online, but Luigi enhanced the contrast a bit to reveal additional details.
And if you look carefully in this version here, where the contrast has been changed, as we zoom, look what you see. Yeah, you can start seeing you see them clearly right there. Yeah, the slanted rectangular doors, yeah.
Finally, and perhaps most damningly, the map of Papoose Lake was literally altered 8 days after Bob Lazar went public in his first anonymous video. You heard me right. They changed the map 8 days after Bob started to speak out. And the map was clearly modified in a way that would specifically hide the existence of S4.
Bob went public on May 15th, 1989.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't come public. His name wasn't public. It was him as Dennis, as in silhouette. And 8 days after that, the United States Department of the Interior, who works on the geological maps of the landscape at the test site, where it's Groom Lake, Papoose Lake, and the whole Nevada test site, actually modified specifically Groom Lake and Papoose Lake and Papoose Mountain Range there. And there's a stamp on all the modifications, because the modification was dated 1989. So on the actual small print, it says maps modified 1989, but the stamp of the exact day is May 23rd, 1989, exactly 8 days after Bob went public.
And specifically, they're getting just Papoose Lakes, they're removing S4.
No, what they removed, the specificity there is the specific thing they removed is there's a road that leads from Groom Lake down to Papoose Lake. And as it leads down to Papoose Lake, the north end of the lake, the road forks off, it splits off in two areas, to the west of Papoose Lake and to the right of Papoose Lake, where S4 is. They specifically removed the road to the east of Papoose Lake, and they kept the same one. To the west, which, why would they do that? Why would you suddenly remove the road that goes to S4
And leave everything else.
and leave everything else there?
Yeah,
I mean,
that is an amazing discovery.
Yeah, and it's there. I mean, it's not like, we're not making anything up here. I was very specific of like, I don't want to put anything that makes us look like we're inventing stuff. This is verifiable. You could order these maps.
The other thing I think that's interesting is for people doubting the story, Jeremy Corbell and Ross Coulthard found a bunch of people who have verified Bob's presence at S4, right? I don't know if
I
we
think
have as well.
arriving at 51, we're getting on the milestones.
That's
Yeah,
right, yeah.
Yeah, I
And
think
then
they found a bunch.
George Knapp also had some people, and they got threatened back then, and they were told 6 people that were threatened, and basically they never made it forward. George talks about it in the interviews we did with him, and he's talked about it in the past, and he says they all received a phone call, they were all threatened, and they never went public. And you know, for anybody who's a Bob Lazar detractor or doesn't believe the story, you then have to not believe George Knapp, because why would George lie about that? What's the benefit here? You know? And somebody's gonna say, well, it's because he put his name attached to the Bob story. No, not when that was happening. He was still investigating the Bob story. So he said that back then. It's not like it's new information.
Well, he was getting a lot of shit.
Yeah, he was
Being
getting a
involved
lot of
with the
shit.
story back then. That was not, certainly not a feather just sticking his cap.
You know, it's something I really want to put a lot of emphasis on, because of all the haters out there, is this happened when he came out. It was in 1989. Gonna ruin your life. So why would, first of all, why would Bob Lazar do that? And then why would George Knapp, a respected investigative journalist in Las Vegas, who already was well known and had a good job, why would he hang his reputation and ruin his entire career just to support another liar? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me.
No, it really
So,
doesn't.
you know, let's not
Outside of UFOs. Yeah. Did you learn any other details about the guy that had died that you were replacing?
Yeah, they had an operating reactor. So apparently, which is also brings up all kinds of other questions to me. Apparently, the reactors of all the craft are exactly the same. So that makes me think of a manufacturing facility.
Yeah.
That's like a Ford making an engine, and it goes in, a bunch of different models. How can all these crafts have the same, the same power system or propulsion system in it? Anyway, I don't want to go off on a tangent, but he had a reactor, so it was probably from one of the other crafts. And why they did this is beyond me. They took it out to the nuclear test site, and they physically cut into it while it was running under load, and it exploded. And I think there were 3 guys there, maybe more. They were all killed. So, number one, why would you do that? Number two, it makes me think either they were extremely desperate and want to just find out what's in there, and why would you even do it while it was operating, or extremely confident that they knew what was going on in the reactor, where they could safely cut it, and they had a reason to get in there. But apparently that information never made it back, whatever they gleaned from it, or even their suspicions at the beginning, because Barry and I were kind of starting from the beginning on the reactor. So everything they had done previously was lost. Anyway.
You ever learn the guy's name or any details about? Does Barry have a last name?
Yeah, Barry Castillo. It's spelled Castillo, but Castile, I don't know how it's pronounced. Yeah.
Have you ever tracked him down after?
I think briefly decades ago we made a reel, because there was another guy that would come in and out once in a while named Rene.
Okay.
I don't remember his last name, but I mean, at some point I really put a lot of effort into trying to find Dennis Mariani and Barry, and I think some people did track down Dennis. I think he died not too long ago.
Okay.
I don't know about Barry, but I was never able to find it. 'Cause, I mean, back in the time I was looking for him, there was no internet.
Sure.
So you had to go through public records and stuff. And
Yeah.
it was much more difficult than it is now.
Yeah. And I know of one instance in which the name Dennis Mariani was corroborated by somebody at Nevada test site, and so I won't go further than that, but because it's not my thing to tell, but you're giving names, and I think some of these people could still be alive, which is pretty remarkable too. Maybe we could track some of them down. They could back you up. I wonder. I mean, they have to know.
I'm kind of wondering why nobody else came out.
Yeah.
I mean, although Barry wouldn't talk about it much, there are times question, holy cow, can you believe this is being kept secret? And he goes, it sucks, I know.
Yeah.
So he didn't think it was, he wasn't with the program as far as keeping this from, the entire world.
What was his background?
No idea.
Okay. But there was kind of a collegial goodwill between you and him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he'd goof around sometimes, which was nice because everything else was just so rigid and military. So, I should hear the story where he'd see the golf ball at the reactor, and sometimes we'd start talking about stupid stuff. So it's good to see a normal person, that just acted like a human instead of a robot.
What happened when he threw the golf ball at the reactor?
He was showing me the field on it, and he said, check this out, and took a golf ball and intending to hit the reactor, and instead it bounced off the field and then hit a ceiling tile, which dislodged it and made all the little particles, come down. And we knew Dennis was going to be coming back in 2 minutes, so it was, red alert. We had to, grab the stools and go and reascend it and clean it up and everything. And shortly after that, Dennis walks in and says, what's going on? Nothing. We're working like we should be.
This is a remarkable detail. Around the reactor, you have this sort of force field-like thing, this like repelling force.
Yeah. Once a hemisphere on top of a plate, about the size of a basketball, maybe a little bigger, on top of a 15-inch square plate, the hemisphere is removable. Once the hemisphere is put back on, if the emitter is in the right position, the reactor will turn on immediately, and it'll produce a gravitational field around it, and you can push on it, and you can't touch the reactor from that point. It's somewhat elastic, like if you have two light poles of a magnet, pushing them together, you get that. It's the exact same feel, but without metal, just your hands. But as I said before, what's really interesting is you can move the reactor on the table, and once you turn it on and you're pushing on the feel, the reactor doesn't slide. So it's not transferring the force to the reactor. It's pushing your hand away. But so it's really interesting to me.
How did the reactor work?
This is all guess. This
Sure.
is just all guesswork.
Yes.
It has a super heavy element in it, which appeared to be 115 on the periodic chart. There's a little tower in it, and from X-rays, we could see that there's a loop around the base plate. So it was theorized, apparently, Barry with his other lab partner, they thought that was a cyclotron, an accelerator, and that the tube that came up the side was an off-ramp, essentially. And that particle, or whatever was being accelerated, interacts with the 115, and somehow that produces the gravitational field.
How did it feel on your hand?
It felt exactly like pushing magnets together.
Okay.
It was just elastic. I mean, it was compressible to some degree, and then when it got close to it, nothing is getting past that.
With magnets, you have to have light poles for them to repel.
Yeah.
And in this case, you're not,
It's just matter repelling matter.
Yeah, it's so
without
weird.
polarity.
Does it feel like what does it feel like? Is there a texture to it, or?
No, it's just elastic, but it becomes, it's not linear.
But does it feel like?
It says it's logarithmic, it's easy to push, and then it becomes impossible.
Okay.
There's no way you're getting past the next 3 inches. You could probably sit a car on top of it, and nothing would change.
Does it feel like saran wrap, or does it feel like what does it feel like when you're in it? Does it feel like?
No, it just feels.
It's literally like air, like.
Yeah. I see what you're saying.
You know what I mean?
Describe that.
Yeah. Like, is there a
just
coolness, a heat?
No.
It's just like space-time itself.
Yeah, it's just. describe it.
Sure,
Yeah,
sure.
but it's just there.
In just a few seconds, turn a pile of rust into shining treasures. Developed in an industrial laboratory.
I mean, at this point, I don't even think it's gravity.
What do
I
you
think
think?
this is another completely unique force. It doesn't behave enough like gravity.
And explain why it's so different.
Like, I mean, because at least my thoughts at this point are, I think gravity is just a property of matter, and it's only an attractive force. I'm not sure you can have anti-gravity.
Hmm.
Like if it was gravity, at one point Barry showed me he had one of the emitters. It's working. He put a lit little kitchen candle right at the focal point, and he powered up the reactor, and the flame stopped flickering and stood there frozen in space and time. But I could see the light from the candle. The flame was still visible. Also, he removed the candle and then rotated. But it wasn't in the candle test before that, so it, it it's a really unusual thing.
When Bob mentioned this anomalous force coming from the craft's emitter, I immediately racked my brain for anyone in conventional aerospace circles who talks about something similar. And then I realized I just interviewed the lead electrostatic scientist at NASA, Dr. Charles Bueller, who talks about something very similar.
Where the heck is this energy coming from? Because if I was to stick this in space, it would accelerate with the power off. That's a problem.
You see, there's a long lineage of people studying gravity control, or anti-gravity, in the United States. Perhaps my favorite example is mid-century inventor Thomas Townsend Brown, who discovered that when you apply a high voltage to certain asymmetric capacitors, they produce thrust. That's right, propulsion with no fuel, no exhaust, no propellant, just electricity as the input, converted directly into motion. A new model for space propulsion that could eliminate crude chemical combustion rockets forever. Now you might think that's insane and defies Newton's laws, and I'll spare you all of the corroborating research that I've dug up showing that Brown made real breakthroughs in the world of anti-gravity. Dr. Charles Bueller at NASA has taken Brown's experiments to the next level with modern instruments, more rigorous controls,
You see about 0.1 grams, that corresponds to about 1 millimeter of thrust.
and decades of electrostatics expertise from his work at Kennedy Space Center behind him. He's done over 2,000 of these experiments and controlled for just about every variable you can think of. And he's also getting millinewtons of thrust, basically real propulsion with electricity as the sole input. And you can't really argue with his authority to make these claims. The man literally runs electrostatics at NASA. He's the incoming president of the American Electrostatic Society, and he's contributed two fundamental principles to the field of electrostatics that are now widely accepted. So this is kind of an interesting moment in history because we have a man who reverse engineered UFOs, and then we have a NASA lead electrostatic scientist. So I thought I'd just leave it to you guys to kind of nerd out.
Yeah. Well, first of all, hi Charles.
Hi, Bob. This is a very exciting moment for me. I'm a big fan.
Now, the thing about Bob Lazar is he kind of exists on an island. We've never seen him interact with other highly credentialed engineers in aerospace. And what I've learned after spending time with him is he's actually pretty skeptical when it comes to other scientific anomalies.
Man, I'm real interested to hear, your physical experiment setup. Is it a hybrid of your idea and T.T. Brown's, or are you just duplicating one of his experiments? I mean, what can you explain to me what it looks like? What's your test setup look like?
Gosh, 2,000 variations. I'll try to do my best.
I mean, how is this I'm sure you've seen the lifter ion motors and stuff along those lines. How is it different from those?
A few ways. Um, the ion thrusters obviously use ions in air to give the momentum conservation. What's interesting about this force, um, even though sort of the same geometry can be used, um, but in high vacuum you'll get the thrust. But it's always in the opposite direction of the ion thrusters, which is really cool. Because what happens is you have a sharp electrode and ground plane. However you do that, you can come up with a million ways to do that. In air, when you do that, you break down the gases, the thermometers and forth like that. In vacuum, we can actually see these forces arise, but they're always in the opposite direction of the ion wave, which is really interesting.
That is very
They go
interesting.
the same direction as the rocket exhaust. You never think of that conventionally, so it really messes with you. So that's what's interesting about it. That's one main difference.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, that the fact that it's in the opposite direction of an ion, where an ion thruster would be, and you've done it in a hard or reasonably hard vacuum, and you're getting measurable thrust.
But we have. We've been doing that since 2020. So for the last 6 years, we test almost every day, probably every other day, different configurations or zeroing in on a configuration, test another concept, and that is an ongoing iterative process. So yes, we have tested high vacuum, 10 to the minus 6, or better, the chicken get up to 10 to the minus 7. Enough to prove to us that there's no ion wave.
What kind of thrust in newtons or grams are you getting?
Well, we're still playing around in the hundreds of micronewtons or million ranges. So I think the highest we have gotten is probably up to the 50 millinewton mark. But that's when we stack these together. We don't learn a lot from them when we do that, other than we can make more thrust, which is important. But we like to understand the thrust density, if you will, of each thruster. So we're trying to optimize each type, optimize each parameter, space, we have access to, before we can get to larger chambers or outer space and test the mega structures.
Physically, how big are these thrusters?
Oh, they're not very big. They're about 6 inches, maybe 6 by 6, roughly.
Okay.
That range. It's a nice size. You know, we can make them bigger, but we don't gain anything by that. We just try to keep them manageable so that we can do different things with them. We can stack them, try different voltages, and then we try to measure the currents, make sure that in many cases there is no current, which is very odd.
Yeah, I would say.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, I'd say.
Turn the power source off and it keeps going.
Wait, what?
Yeah, it is very annoying. In some cases, we trap the charge in there. It's all that's required. So that really limits a lot of things.
So a physically larger one doesn't get you any more thrust, but you can stack them and get increased thrust.
Well, just a large one will, but we won't learn anything from it. We can do 8 inches or 10 inches, which we have, but we're not learning anything. We want to learn what is the best geometry, shape. We want to optimize it. We know area is one of the ways. That will be optimized later, so in space. But on ground test particles, we're kind of fixed by the geometry of our chamber. Once we get some funding here, Drew does have almost a walk-in side chamber in his garage. We can walk around. When that comes online in a few months, then we can test much larger versions of it. So the thrust does depend on the area, it does depend on the volume, it does depend on the voltages, the typical things you would expect. But we try to optimize it as much as we can with the chamber we have actually running right now.
How much are you charging them up to? What kind of voltage are you using?
Well, when we started in 2016, it was the Townsend Brown level, 150,000. Okay. Yeah. Thank goodness we're not anywhere near that now. I think we're operating right now about 400 volts.
You're at 400 volts?
Yeah, so his belief is that it's really Brown thought that the voltage range was, the thing causing the thrust, but Charles's belief is that that's sort of a proxy for electric field strength, and there are obviously other ways to amplify electric field strength at lower voltages, and so he's using 400 volts.
Yeah, but I
basic
can't.
thrust.
It's shocking.
1.5
You're getting
millinewtons.
it's unbelievable. Man, I want to come over and hang out with you.
I can introduce you guys.
Put your hands on it, do whatever you like. You're more than welcome.
Isn't that exciting?
Yeah. I can't believe you're getting these increase the voltage, you don't see any change in thrust? Or
Oh, you'll get more thrust for sure. We like to stay with 200 volts, 500 volts. We like to stay low if we can.
okay, yeah,
It's a preference. We will average the test of the 2,500 volts. We start worrying about breakdown. We get a little above that because these systems are getting much smaller, so we don't have access to the higher fields anymore. It's material properties that we have to get, but we like the 200 volts. It gets rid of other nuances like corona wind or anything like that.
right, yeah, all that stuff gets tossed out.
Yeah, you're not even ionizing the air.
No,
in air at
it's
400
nothing.
volts. Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it's nothing. That's why I was so shocked because all those other effects drop out right as soon as you drop the voltage down that low, and you can get some cleaner data. Then that's damn. This is really cool.
We're converting Bob on Townsend Brown. Well, yeah, thank you for this. Really appreciate it, man.
Good to meet you.
We do too. Take care, guys.
Take care. That's that's really fascinating.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah, it's a little more than just wild.
I know, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, that's significant.
I think so.
It could really be significant. And you know, the thing is, the first thing I would point out, there's something wrong with your tests, but not in 1,500 tests.
No.
And you know, when you've gone through it that many times and have done it for this long, boy, and you've adjusted all of potential parameters and fallouts to.
No, I can't.
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah, you've got to assume that the thing's working.
But you mentioned DC voltage in the craft, and that was that's also a Townsend Brown thing. It's high DC voltage.
Yeah, it's not just high DC voltage. I even mentioned it on Joe Rogan that I think the material the craft is made from is an electric, and so it always, just like a magnet always has a magnetic field to it, an electric always has an electrostatic field to it.
Interesting.
And I think that's certainly something important.
Were there high climb rates to the voltage likely? You know what I mean? Like really high climb, like fast, swinging up in voltage.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
So fascinating because
Without a
it's literally all the Townsend Brown stuff. It's like fast, high DC voltage.
Yeah,
like fast
yeah,
climb
there's-
rates. Yeah.
I wonder if that really applies to the craft more than I was giving it credit for.
I think it does, especially after your conversation with you.
Yeah. I mean, now that's making me wonder. It could very well be, again, because of the high voltage on the craft and.
It's DC,
Yeah,
so there's no
it's DC.
magnetic field interference.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
We're making progress. A lot here.
It
And
might have been so far past this already, but.
Well, the funny thing about Brown is he was looking for a power source that was nuclear for like the rest of his career.
Oh,
He figured out the electrogravitics, and then he called it the flame jet.
Boy, that would have been the guy to have there other than me.
Well, I mean, you and him. I just
No, you don't need
walk
me.
off set. No, you and him would be.
I just get in the way. But yeah, he'd be the guy to have.
And you were given some theories, like there being two gravities, gravity A, gravity B. Was that in the briefing documents, or was this told to you?
Actually, I think that was part of what Barry had other lab notes, and I don't know if those were previous documents that he had, but there were lab notes, and this was the direction they were going in at one time. There are two specific different types of gravity: gravity A and gravity B. Gravity A works on a smaller micro scale, while gravity B works on a larger macro scale. Gravity A is what is currently being labeled as the strong nuclear force in mainstream physics, and gravity A is the wave that you need to access and amplify to enable you to cause space-time distortion for interstellar travel.
Gravity B is like cosmological scale, and gravity A is like subatomic scale. Is that-
Apparently.
Which it is really interesting, because I remember your like kind of OG science tutorial. We were texting about it.
Yeah,
last night.
the excerpts from the government Bible,
Yeah.
the original tape that you did.
And it's amazing. So it sounds like the kind of gravity A is like basically the perimeter
of the atom or what you're dealing with. But
So you have to scale it
again,
up.
I'm just repeating stuff that I was told. It's not like I conducted an experiment to verify that. So
But it is almost the solution to what has been keeping physics stuck for so long. which
yeah,
is the ability
possibly.
to quantize gravity.
Right, possibly.
So
Possibly.
interesting.
If in fact that's gravity.
Have you ever talked about this? But gravity-like fields, and I want to give this to you because you can make sense of it more than me. And we were talking about this last time.
Oh.
This is this guy Burkhard Hein. Have you ever heard that name?
I've heard the name, but I don't know anything about it.
So he, at the age of 19, became deaf and blind due to an explosion. And he was a German, and he ended up moving over to the U.S. and working for Lockheed Martin in the 50s and was renowned as just a total genius. And he had a really interesting theory of gravity, which involved, I guess, two gravitational fields and like some of these like subcomponents of gravity. I wrote this down because it's honestly beyond my pay grade. Gravity breaks down big and small scale. So it could be gravity A and gravity B.
Yeah.
Specifically, standard gravity, G, is the tensor summation of three gravitational components. GG, which G, big G, little g, which is scalar gravity propagated by the graviton. G,
By the graviton, so he's going with graviton.
for that. GGP, dark energy / matter propagated by the gravitophoton. And GQ, vacuum field, a repulsive force propagated by the quintessence particle. So in addition to the standard four forces, gravity, electromagnetism, strong nuclear, and weak nuclear, EHT, which is extended Hein theory, which is named after him, adds two previously unrecognized gravitational forces, which brings us to 6 fundamental forces.
Wow.
And what I find interesting about that is there's Amy Eskridge is this anti-gravity researcher who actually died under very mysterious circumstances, and she apparently was, at the end of her life, kept talking about a 6th force. That was like
A 6th force.
6th
really.
force, yeah.
Six forces ancient belief. That's what my group has a mathematical equation to physically describe. We have 6 force on one.
And so
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44.
wonder about this book, and there's these two guys in Germany who are very high conviction in this extended Hein.
I'd like to read it.
What's yours?
Oh, that's really interesting.
Isn't it interesting?
I'm also on that. I think it was not gravity. I don't think it is. I don't think it's gravity.
Yeah,
It's just
something else.
it's something else.
Yeah.
Something else
Something
going
else,
on.
yeah.
Because if it were gravity well that you'd normally see, it's a little black hole, little gravitational source. You just see everything getting sucked into it, no matter what.
Other things would have acted differently too.
Yeah, light lensing and yeah.
Yeah, so
It almost feels like
it almost has to be. It almost has to be.
it's almost like it had root access to reality itself. Like it froze time.
Yeah, but if it froze time, how come the photons were still coming out of it? You see a glowing candle, it should be dark.
Can it freeze time in some local space?
But still,
Confine it.
still the photons
Yes.
are flying out.
Yeah.
Or maybe, and if you say, well, it doesn't affect photons, how come it made the black little ball? So,
Where do you think? Would you have a best candidate for what it is?
no.
There is.
No, that's why I think, I mean, I lean towards, this is another force, and
Yeah.
just stop calling it gravity. But,
Do you think it's
as
what's
Barry said, the only thing we know that does this is gravity, so we're calling it a gravity generator. Okay.
And then it's being created ostensibly due to this proton bombardment of element 115, and then
Possibly.
you get 116, and then you get a decay, and then
If in fact all that's occurring.
yes.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
I mean, don't forget that in the film we did not include the mechanical watch experiment that was also conducted in the lab. So there was the candle, the black ball, and the mechanical watch. We didn't put it in there just because we wanted to shorten the film. But there was another experiment, Bob. Remember, and there was like a mechanical watch that just stopped.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Oh.
that's another indication
where Bob said, just like the, I mean, it's kind of similar to the candle. It just stopped, but I can still see it.
Yeah.
It's like it's freezing
It's
time,
it's freezing movement,
freezing movement.
but not affecting anything else. There's nothing that just freezes movement.
No, it doesn't. But that is really, time is so weird because we
But
only
something that inhibits kinetic energy,
right.
which would be, that could be really weird.
Well, it's so weird, especially given all the forms of possible kinetic energy. You're talking about a watch, a mechanical watch, and a flame are very different things.
Yeah.
So it's so strange. While you were there, did you tell anybody what you were working on? You know, your wife at the time.
No,
Anybody?
Gene Huff.
You told Gene Huff.
Yeah.
Okay.
I told John Lear.
And you even brought them to
Yeah,
see,
oh yeah, to see the test. Yeah,
to see
because I
the
had the test flight scheduled.
Yep.
So, I know it's a Wednesday night. Yeah, we're going out there and you guys are gonna see it.
This is John Lear, and today is March 22nd, 1989. We're standing just about 8 miles due east of Blue Lake, Nevada, the super government secret test site. And just a few minutes ago, we saw the government extraterrestrial UFOs fly over there. We all watched for about 7 or 8 minutes. Right here, I have my telescope. It's 8 inches, and I had it focused in for about 15 seconds and saw for myself that in fact it was a yes.
There isn't much to see with the camera back in that day.
And that was while you were working at S4. You showed them, or was it afterwards?
That was, boy, that's a tough question. That was while I was working.
Okay. When you saw the UFO with Gene Huff and John Lear, and you kind of, took them, what was it, to the little mesa?
No. It was right outside. It was,
Yeah.
before you get to the black mailbox. The reason anybody knew about the black mailbox, everybody wanted to know where the road was that we've turned down. When you come up the highway, it's this first dirt road you go down, but there's no landmarks around there. And if you keep going like another mile or two, there's a black mailbox. So I just said, it's around the black mailbox.
Yeah.
And that just got repeated, and everybody thought
It's a black
the
mailbox.
black mailbox road is where it is. It's not anywhere near where it is.
When all you guys went up there and you saw the UFO fly, and I'm sure they were just totally shocked, were you allowed back at S4 after that?
The first time they didn't know we were out there.
Oh, they didn't know.
Yeah. We only got caught the last time.
Okay. So they get, and then
No, I
after,
would never have left them back.
so after the last time you weren't left back there.
Right.
That was it.
That was absolutely it. Yeah.
You were finished
No,
after
they're
that.
not gonna come on back.
Yeah.
They were pretty pissed.
Yeah. Why did you decide to come out and approach?
I don't know, because I was still getting followed. There was always somebody parked outside my house, and I was starting to get scared. And I think that's when I first started telling Gene. I said, hey, if all of a sudden they disappear, I'm working out at the site there. And eventually I told him, he said, why, are you working on secret weapons or something? I said, no, I'm working on this. And, kind of told him, but I don't know, I'm just getting concerned about what's going on.
Why do you think they were following you?
I don't know. It might just be normal security.
Did you take anything from the lab?
Well, no.
Okay. Okay, later. But that's interesting that they were. We'll file that away. But it's interesting that they were following you as if you had done something wrong when you were just showing up to work.
No, but I mean, they were still doing. They allowed me in there, and they were still progressing on my clearance. They were still going through background checks, but they really wanted me on site, operating quickly. And they kind of let that slide because I've had clearance before. So, but they were looking at some other things too.
Got it. About you personally.
About my relationship.
Okay. Got it. And then they were digging into that? That's kind of.
Yeah, you have to have a stable family background if you're going to be,
Okay.
playing around with state secrets and stuff like that. So. drinking. They're going to be checking out, you know, how you play with friends. If you were going to rages, they want to make sure,
Yeah.
you know, your wife wasn't running around, and they don't want any stress or anything to.
But then at that point, if you see these like, you know, black cars parked outside your house, why isn't your reaction, okay, I'm just gonna kind of eat it? Like they're gonna like, you know, give me like a colonoscopy as far as like, you know, literally like knowing 360 everything about my life, but I'll be able to retain my job at S4. Or do you get scared and you're like, I gotta come out?
I guess it's I don't really remember how I felt back then, but I was just getting a little concerned.
Yeah. And
I think it couldn't hurt to at least tell one person, you know. So.
Did you want, because John Lear gave the files on you to George Knapp, right? KLAS, is that how it went down?
Gave the files.
Or gave the, like, said, like, you know, hey,
yeah, I mean, John Lear is the one that contacted George Knapp and said you should speak to this.
Okay, so he played kind of intermediary. Was he going rogue on his own, or did you say, hey, can you contact, you know, George or somebody in the local news to help me get this stuff out?
No, I mean, at that, well, things were starting to get weird, and I don't really remember how that went down, but I think, you know, George said, look, you gotta get the information out publicly, because that's the only way that'll protect yourself. I said, that's really stupid. I'm not gonna do that. And you know, it was just a couple days later going, well, maybe it's not that stupid.
Mm. And do you think it was self-protection or idealism? Was a part of you like, this needs to be out, this is crazy?
Oh yeah,
the
of course it
government's
was.
hiding. Yeah.
But it was an equal part of self-protection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, fair enough. Lear is somebody I think a lot of people have questions about, because he was
Yeah, crazy beliefs.
Crazy beliefs.
You know, I mean, some of the stuff was so ridiculous. You know, I would sit there and just talk to him and go, "You are absolutely out of your mind if you believe."
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't believe the sun was hot.
Yeah.
He said there were people living in the sun. They said, "There's no one living in the sun, John." And said, "Yeah, they built the moon on Jupiter, and that's where they manufactured it, and they towed it into Earth's orbit." What is giving you these ridiculous? Why are you believing this nonsense?
Yeah.
And
how'd you meet him?
Gene Huff was a real estate appraiser, and at the time, John was looking to get a loan on his house, and he had been on. George Knapp had a show on the record, like after the news, and John Lear had been on there back when he wasn't so. Well, I wasn't going to say he wasn't so crazy, but
Sure.
didn't have such crazy ideas. You know, I mean, he was he was an accomplished pilot, a brilliant guy, and he had, you know, tons of files and had lots of great contacts. The only problem with John was he had no bullshit filter.
Yeah.
I mean, he could have a 4-star general tell him something, and he'll write it and put it in a file, and he'll have some derelict that's walking by his house and go, "I know Jello thinks," and he'll go, "All right," and he'll put them in the same file, and they have the same level of credibility. Going, "What are you talking about?" You know. So he drove me crazy because of that. But he did, you know, earlier on, he was, you know, less exotic with his theories,
Yeah.
and, you know, spoken to George Knapp. I had seen it on TV, so had Gene Huff, and anyway, he wound up doing the appraisal on his house, and I went with Gene.
Yeah.
Sadly, most people on Advantage plans today don't know that there's an additional option that gives them amazing coverage for only 30.
You know, help him measure it, and you know, kind of got talking to John, and that's how we met.
He's such an odd character because his father created the first business airliner in the U.S., the Learjet.
Yeah.
The Lear aviation legend.
Bill Lear invented the autopilot, invented the 8-track tape. I mean, he's
radio direction finder.
Yeah. He was quite a guy.
He was, and so
he had a problem with John too. I mean, John was eliminated from you know, his
The
will,
will.
and John showed me his will. You know, every paragraph said, except, you know, everybody gets this stuff except John Olson there, except John Olson there. I mean, he was so angry at his kid.
Yeah,
Just
yeah, yeah.
completely removed him from that.
Maybe Apple fell far from the tree, like, you know, as far as you know, aviation engineering prowess or something. But John Lear won all sorts of records as a pilot. He was a very impressive pilot.
Oh yeah, credit is due where credit is due. I mean, he had all kinds of world records, and it's just his filter.
John Lear was super into UFOs before you got the job at Area 51 S4. Like, I think he had a UFO blog. And so, do you think, like, why do you think it didn't come up in a background check that you were friends with this
Oh,
guy?
it did.
Oh, it did.
They absolutely asked me about
Oh,
John
they asked
Lear
you
like
about
the
John Lear.
first day.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, what's your relationship with John Lear? In fact, that might have been the first question.
Really?
Yeah, at EG&G when I sat down. Yeah, it's the first thing they mentioned.
And what did you say?
I said, he's a crazy friend.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't remember what else, but I just, you know, told him some stuff. Yeah, met him, and
Yeah.
it's fascinating. And I mean, John would just do the craziest stuff. You know, back then he flew L-1011s, which is a big, big jet. You know, 400 people on it or something like that. And you know, occasionally he'd call and just, you know, be like Tuesday night, 8 o'clock. Hey, you want to go to Minneapolis? Okay. All right, meet me down at the airport. Wear a suit and come on. So he'd be a pilot, and you know, the pilot of the craft, and I'd come on. He'd just come on the tarmac and
Yeah.
tell this guy, and you know, walk up in the plane, and he'd tell the co-pilot and engineer, hey, this guy's from the FAA, so he's just going to be observing us and taking it. So I take the jump seat behind the, you know, pilot, and just fly with John.
Did he talk to you about UFOs before you got the job at S4 Area 51?
No, he didn't talk to me about it, but
Okay.
I mean, he spoke about them.
Did he ever?
I mean, he used to tell me there are aliens living in the mountains alongside, you know, I think it's I-95 or something,
Right.
on the highway. He said, yeah, there's a billion of them in there. And
So crazy. Did he ever show you anything Billy Myers related?
I don't recall.
Okay.
I think when I described the craft to him and drew it, I think he brought out
The Billy
Billy
Myers
Meyer books,
tapes.
and he said, I think that's where I first, in fact it is, that's where I first saw it.
So we showed her the Billy Myers tape.
I said, yeah, that's not like the craft, that's
Yeah.
the craft.
That's so interesting. So yeah, he kind of helped you piece it together. Did he was he still affiliated with? Because he was a CIA cargo pilot until 1983. I think.
Yeah, that's true.
Did he continue flying for them after that, or did he disappear? Okay.
I don't
Yeah.
think so.
Yeah. Because he's this interesting character to me, because it seems like he has crazy access to Area 51. Like, he's like snooping around and taking photos of like F-117s. He even leaks the details of the F-117 to George Knapp, but then he still like knows all the security guards there. So I'm like, what's his deal?
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, I had been out at the, you know, but before the S4 thing, you know, out in the desert in the middle of the night with binoculars and stuff, outside of Tonopah.
Yeah.
You know, trying to get pictures of any new aircraft that's flying around. I mean, he was obviously a big aviation buff.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, and I was into that too. Sometimes I'd just go out and watch, you know, fighters taking off from Nellis Air Force Base. You could get right up to the fence there, and you know, so it was, yeah, he was definitely into snooping around and
Yeah,
seeing whatever he could find.
I mentioned Jacques Vallée earlier. You met him, right?
Yeah, I met him, and you know, we spoke briefly, and then from what I remember, somebody was talking about making a movie with him, and then after hearing about me and talking, they started talking about, well, maybe we'll do it on Bob instead, and he was super pissed off.
Really?
Yeah, and then from that
Interesting.
point on, all of a sudden, you know, everything Bob said You know,
Really?
yeah. But yeah, initially he was.
Because yeah, he wrote a book called Messengers of Deception, and he writes about you, and he says, Balthazar seems to be very legit, but he also talks about this pine saw drink he drinks. This drink he drinks, and the memory lapses it caused.
No, but there's no memory.
No
lapse.
memory
That's a
lapses.
bunch of nonsense.
Okay.
You know.
So it was like this vitamin B
Clearly.
shot that was like immunity related.
Yeah, that's all it was.
Okay.
Again, we're working with completely unknown materials.
Yeah.
We don't know what, and apparently people had severe reactions
Yeah.
to some of the stuff just touching crab. So, yeah. So
Yeah,
they had
yeah.
dealt with that before.
I feel like I can defend you on 99.9% of things, and then the one thing I have trouble with is the MIT thing, because that's the other thing circulating. Did you get your master's there, or you were sent there
I was sent there.
on a specific kind of program, isolated program?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah, and I did a lot of auditing
Uh-huh.
in both places.
And then on Caltech, for Caltech, what was that? So you were sent to MIT, and then Caltech was different.
Caltech was way before that.
Okay.
That was, but
And that.
I don't know. I guess if I really look through old paperwork and stuff, I can come up with things. But that's never been.
Yeah. And I think George Knapp found, some people who leave.
Yeah.
One other question that people have is, why were you allowed to give him a tour of Los Alamos after, you blew the whistle on Area 51? Like, why wasn't there this nationwide directive at all of the national labs, like, don't let this guy back?
Look, it was really nothing. I mean, we got on the Southwest flight, came out there, rented a car, drove up, and I still knew all the guards and stuff like that. So we came up and Lazar, you're back. Yeah, just going in there to.
So you think it was just like a different time, and
you can't. Los Alamos is so much higher security now. I mean, it was so nonchalant back then, and we just rode right into the experimental areas, came over here to George's desk.
Were you surprised? Was it part of you nervous that there would be some rebel alert?
No, not at all.
You were like
Zero concern.
You didn't worry that there was any sort of coordination between Area 51 and Los
Nobody
Alamos?
knew what was going on there. It was just, like I said, it was